One was called Restoring Honor, the other Reclaim the Dream. Two competing rallies in Washington, D.C. Fox commentator Glenn Beck held his event at the Lincoln Memorial on the anniversary of Martin Luther King's historic I Have a Dream speech. Not to be outdone, the Reverend Al Sharpton organized another rally to honor King. Molly Henneberg begins our coverage with the nearly all-white crowd at the Beck event.
Many of the people here were veterans. Beck, in some of his opening remarks, thanked members of the military for their service to protect America.
Our fighting men and women do the things that most of us don't even want to think about. They do it while we're asleep. They do it while we're at play. The point is, they do it because it is their calling. We have asked them to do it.
There were several mentions today that this was the location on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial 47 years ago when civil rights leader Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. gave his I Have a Dream speech. His niece, Alveda King, was here today.
If Uncle Martin could be here today, he would surely commend us for giving honor where honor is due.
Sarah Palin, the former Republican vice presidential candidate, said King believed in the idea that all men are created equal and, quote, we feel the spirit of Dr. King today. Others in the crowd also talked about the messages they hope get out today.
Getting back to our grassroots of what our country was founded on, which was God and the principles that the Bible preaches and the Constitution was built on.
The call to restore the historical values in our nation of hard work, personal responsibility, families taking care of families, churches getting re-engaged.
Beck and organizers say this was a non-political event, and they asked people who attended not to bring political signs, even though this tends to be a smaller government, lower taxes crowd. For the most part, people complied, so you had a big rally in Washington with very few political signs. In Washington, Molly Henneberg, Fox News.
The march was called Reclaim the Dream, of course referring to the I Have a Dream speech by Martin Luther King Jr. 47 years ago in 1963 that inspired so many people. Reverend Al Sharpton's National Action Network organized this march. Some of the same people who rallied for civil rights in 1963 gathered here. Union leaders, clergy, people from the Washington, D.C. region, the Secretary of Education. The focus was on education. They marched from D.C.'s Dunbar High School to the future side of the Martin Luther King Memorial on the Washington Mall, very close to the Restoring Honor rally, headlined by Glenn Beck. Al Sharpton and others here saying it's no coincidence that Beck picked this anniversary date.
They told me that others are going to be at the mall. And they're going to be standing where Dr. King stood. Well, they may have the mall, but we have the message. They may have the platform, but we have the dream.
And organizers say that dream is an equal playing field for all Americans. In Washington, Julie Kurtz, Fox News.
Joining us now to discuss today's rallies is the Reverend Eric Lee. He's the president and CEO of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, and he says civil rights leaders are not happy with Beck. Also joining us, Ted Hayes, a conservative activist who thinks Beck personifies the dream King talked about nearly a half-century ago. Ted, if the Glenn Beck's rally personifies King's dream, expound on that a little bit, and if so, why wasn't the audience a little bit more diverse?
Because for the last 45 years, people like Jesse Jackson, Al Sharpton basically have hijacked the dream about Dr. Martin Luther King's civil rights legacy. And they have told black people that white people are racist, they don't care about us, they hate. When these folks got out there in the mall today, they demonstrated the dream of Dr. King, when he dreamed that black people and white people and all races would come together to make America a beautiful place. Al Sharpton does not own that property at the Lincoln Memorial. That belongs to the American people, and anybody, you or anybody, can stand there and try to fulfill the dream of Dr. King and the American people.
I don't think Reverend Lee would argue with that point, but Reverend, what do you say about this idea that Glenn Beck's message personifies King's dream?
Glenn Beck stands in stark contrast to Dr. Martin Luther King. You can clearly see by the crowd that follows Glenn Beck, predominantly white, on the fringe of mainstream society, an extremist message, as opposed to Dr. King, who was inclusive. Dr. King reached out to people of every ethnicity, of every culture, every community, multiple faiths, and all genders, and so it was an inclusive social movement. Today, if the rally for Glenn Beck was supposed to bring a parallel between his message and Dr. King's message, I think it sorely failed.
And yet, he did talk about everybody was born to be equal. And there was not a lot of the fiery language that I think a lot of critics were worried about. Reverend Lee, you want to comment on that?
Well, there's been a tremendous amount of pushback, and Glenn Beck claims to be a student of American history. But by his choosing this day to restore the honor, it took away the fiery message that he had been communicating, and he usually communicates in his pundit talk shows, but it had nothing to do with the dream of Dr. King at all. The dream of Dr. King is about equality and justice. It's about creating an equal playing field, and when you looked out at that audience today, you saw simply white people.
A response,
That's not true, simply white people. It doesn't matter what color you are. It sounds like the pastor is racially profiling people. You mean to tell me that because you're white, you cannot embrace the Dr. Martin Luther King dream? You know, Sharpton was talking about the message in the dream. You know what happened in this city just 2.5 weeks ago? A black church was burned to the ground by a Hispanic Latino person, and it was racially motivated, we believe. We believe the person was an illegal alien. And we have not heard a word from Al Sharpton. We haven't heard a word from the mayor of the city, or no one has come out to decry what has happened. And if you really want to fulfill the dream of Dr. King, you should be here protesting the burning of that black church. And I haven't seen this pastor or any other pastors in this city come and defend or condemn.
We're talking about Glenn Beck, who criminalizes undocumented people.
We're talking about Glenn Beck. You are talking about words. We're talking about deeds. Where is your deeds?
Glenn Beck,
you reverends have led our black people down a blind road. We are leading in every negative social statistic in this country. It's because of you ministers have failed the dream of Dr. Martin Luther King. And now you want to blame white people?
No, we haven't failed the dream.
It's wonderful to see white people out there honoring Dr. Martin Luther King and our soldiers. And
all right, Mr. Hayes, let me let Reverend Lee respond.
But they were not honoring Dr. King. When you talk about equality and justice, when you're talking about freedom for all, then you would have an inclusive audience. Glenn Beck is not embracing the diversity of our country. The only ones that are following Glenn Beck are those who speak racism and discrimination, and it was a mockery on the anniversary of the I Have a Dream speech for Glenn Beck to be on that Lincoln Memorial saying that he's restoring the honor of our country. If you and
the reverends are so close and so clear about this, then why don't you obey Dr. King's dream? When he said, I dreamed that the sons and daughters of the former slaves and the sons and daughters of former slave owners will come together at a table of brotherhood and work these things out. If Reverend Al Sharpton really cared about what's going on in this country, then he will go to Glenn Beck and sit down at the table of brotherhood and work these things out. But instead, he's sitting over there calling people names and accusing white people of being racist when they are racist.
We're talking about the same Glenn Beck that called our president, the United States president, racist.
Well,
we're talking about the same.
What has he done for black people? What has this president of the United States done for black people? You call him a black president, but yet he supports illegal immigration. How is he black president?
He is the president of the United States.
Because of skin color. You guys disobeyed Dr. Martin Luther King, said you shall not judge by the person's skin color, but by the content of character. You voted for Barack Obama simply because of the color of his skin. You know you did.
Who was in Glenn Beck's audience?
It doesn't matter.
It does matter. That is exactly the point, Ted.
White people.
That exactly the point.
Most of the people in Al Sharpton's group was black. Okay, and one Hispanic. Okay?
No, I'm sorry. The Secretary of Education, Arnie Duncan, happens to be white.
Okay, whatever.
And he was there.
Whatever. There was just a few white people, mostly blacks. There's nothing wrong with that. You are racially profiled.
In Glenn Beck's speech today, he appealed to the Republicans, the Democrats, and the Independents. It was clearly a political agenda that he was pushing. When Dr. King was on the Lincoln Memorial, he reached out to people of every ethnicity, every color, every faith, and it was an inclusive movement.
And Dr. King told us to do something that you reverends have not done. You have not brought the country together. You simply divide us more. And ever since Barack Obama has been president, the racial divide in this country has increased, and y'all know it.
And you blame that on African Americans?
No, I blame it on you, pastor, you. Because here's a black church burned down in this city, and not one black minister has come out to investigate or call for its condemnation.
All right, that might be a little off topic here.
It is,
but it's the truth, because they're talking about words. But we're talking about deeds. An evil deed has been done in this city, and where is the leadership?
All right, one more response from Reverend Lee before we go.
I think it was a mockery for Glenn Beck to be on the Lincoln Memorial today, claiming that he is reclaiming the dream of Dr. King when there was nobody that was there who needs to be working together at the table.
Alveda King was there.
Alveda King is not Dr. King.
But
Alveda King is not Dr. King.
You guys are funny.
Mr. Hayes
Yes,
and
ma'am.
Reverend Lee, thank you very much for
Thank
joining
you.
us tonight for this rousing conversation. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. I just want to go on record as saying I'd like to book Ted Hayes and Reverend Lee for next Saturday. All right. Thank you, Ted, very much. 29 years, a long time to wait for anything. And